Hey, before this video starts, this is not a drama video, nor about whoever I was talking about in the statements I'll be talking about. This video is about my past mistakes and the things after that. Please, don't go harassing this person or anyone else mentioned in this video. I'll be really upset. Okay, let's start. Hey y'all, so if you've been on this channel long enough, you would know that my first video discussed the morality of pro shipping / lolicon. Now, is it a good video? No, not at all. There are a lot of not only mistakes in my statements, but just cosmetic mistakes as well. That's why in this first section, I'm going to be going over my statements and amending them now that it's been about 7 months since it's been released. Then in the second section, I will be going over 2 controversial pieces of media and giving my opinion about them, the creators, and the morality of these works being released. And the last section will just be about my general feelings about all of this in general. So a lot of the arguments from my first video stem from taboo themes, which by itself is not the issue. No, the real issue is people lumping the media with harmful depictions of quote-unquote taboo themes in with this media. And as much as I have an issue with my first video, a lot of what I said still rings true. Just because you have the right to post something publicly, this is the internet and you cannot expect full support or be free of consequences just because you have the right to post whatever you want. Actions have consequences, fictional or not. I make this statement and yet I don't provide any actual evidence, so allow me to remedy that. According to the NIH, and why I still believe this is the case is because as a child, your mind doesn't have the social skills to even handle these kinds of actions. Again, I say these things without providing any sources minus a freaking wiki page, but I'm not the best at citing laws, so you either have to take my word for it, or do your own research, which I encourage you to do. Now, do I believe all pro shippers are terrible? No. It's very hard to tell since in reality, a lot of them are victims of harmful acts themselves. I personally think it becomes a problem when you try to make a community out of it, since it allows for the normalization of a lot of weirdo behavior. If you are genuinely serious about using your pro shipping as a coping mechanism, then I don't encourage you to post it all over the internet for people to see, because it does invite weirdos into your space, it invites haters who will send you threats, and it does actively harm you. Pro shipping, whether you see it as a coping mechanism or not, shouldn't be normalized. When I tell you I spent every minute doing research for these 2 pieces of media, wanting to rip my hair out, I mean it. Okay, so what is No Mercy? Well, according to the original Steam post itself, I also want to preface that I did not play this game. Listen, I am not ruining my state of mind just for a commentary video. Luckily, there are some helpful reviews that describe the plot of this game. According to the game itself and the reviews, No Mercy is basically a fetish game centered around rape, incest, and blackmail. You play the male lead and are basically allowed to do whatever you want. Despite the inclusion of a morality system, that does not justify being able to essentially rape whoever you want. At the end of the day, you can't choose to not do that. There is no narrative about the dangers of abuse, there is no message, it's just a game to feel a person's fetish. And clearly, people already see it as such because they aren't playing it for the nuance, they're playing it to get sexual pleasure out of it. While some may view this game as a way to indulge in their albeit gross fantasies without any repercussions, I see it as a gross outlet for people to find a community in. I don't think I have to explain why rape and incest fetishes / kings are harmful and disgusting, but I will. You are turning something harmful and traumatic into a fantasy that really shouldn't be publicized as a game. I mean, why would you want to be, in quotes, rape your partner if it weren't for the power dynamics? Something I think is pretty strange is that the only avoidable thing in this game is NTR, which is defined as a genre where one person in a relationship gets cut through adultery, which, like, really? Of course, it's different for every person. Some may experience this desire because they're a survivor themselves and want to gain some power back. However, turning this trauma into a gross fantasy for men to simply do whatever they want is disgusting. And that's only about the rape part, not even the incest part. incest fetishes have just as much harm as rape fetishes because a lot of the times it pushes harmful narratives about the trauma and lead vulnerable people to possibly think that these things are okay. Not to mention the physical and psychological ramifications incest has on people. Even if we take into account two consenting siblings being in a relationship, it is extremely rare and in most cases involves a power dynamic between the two parties, and of course some form of abuse. In my opinion, not everything needs a deep reason to justify one's claim, so no, you cannot justify incest with any deep reasoning, it's just gross. Now, I want to go over the dev's statement about removing the game because I have some things to say about it. They go on to say that people confuse fiction with reality, attributing fabricated stories where people who play No Mercy then go out on the street and commit vile acts. While I do believe that the average person won't commit a crime after playing this game, they do a great disservice to the people who already have porn-pilled brains who see this and think it's okay to rape your own mother, even if she is a stepmother, and the women around you. We forget that a lot of the media we consume can very much feed into our real lives. So when people consume content like this for sexual pleasure, I don't believe there aren't some real-world consequences. Just because you check with normal people that your game is fine, does not make it fine. I don't want to make any assumptions here, and believe me, that's not what I'm trying to do. But the people who were checking this game probably were very biased themselves. That's honestly just a theory. A game theory. I honestly thought about leaving that part out, but let's continue. And this is what I mean by normalizing these things opens the gates for harmful individuals to find a community in. The devs go on to say how they've gotten disturbing emails from individuals who would do way more harmful things than described in the game, which, whatever it was, if you possibly think that rape and incest aren't sick, then there's something wrong with you, even if fictional. Now, on to the second part, the kinks. Look, incest is incest, blood related or not. Step-parents/siblings are more often than not introduced like a family member, and a lot of kids are raised to treat them as such. So even if they aren't blood related, it still reads as incest. Even if it's just roleplay, why would someone find sexual gratification and intimacy with someone raised as a family member? I find it absolutely insane that they are comparing an incest fetish with a feet fetish. Like, that's... what? Again, with a rape fetish, why would someone get sexual gratification from raping somebody? And even if it's consensual, most of this is done in private, meaning nobody has access to whatever they're doing. So the argument falls flat since this game is public and anyone can access it, even minors. Okay, I'm going to skip over the part about whether or not a game can harm someone because that's for the last section. They then go on to say how inappropriate it was to report that 12-year-olds had access to the game, which isn't entirely wrong when you think about it. Even if they hadn't intended for a younger audience to access this game, it's still really easy for them to do so. Most already have a Steam account, and it's very easy to lie about your age on the internet. Simply, there is no stopping a minor from accessing your game, and yes, it is the parent's responsibility to be monitoring their child's internet activity. However, that doesn't mean the devs are void of responsibility, as they chose to publish this game for anyone, even children. That doesn't mean I believe they should be punished for parents not doing their job. However, I do believe they should be punished for having this game up in the first place. Let's get one thing clear. Spreading awareness about a disgusting game in the hopes of getting removed/banned isn't the same as promoting it to an audience. The intent is to get the authorities/companies to remove the game, not for people to play it. That much is clear. What people do with the information at that point is not the creator's fault. There's a reason it's currently banned in the UK, Australia, and Canada. Their decision to remove it off of Steam didn't do anything in the long run. It's still up on platforms like itch.io, making it still easily accessible to download. Not to mention the amount of people on Twitter sharing where to get it as well. Now, let's talk about the other piece of media. Daddy's Little Toy. Jesus Christ, that is a horrible title. The official description for the book states, and if you know anything about Cinderella or the book itself, this just isn't true regardless if it is a loose retelling or not. Unfortunately, I could not get an archived version of this book, so unfortunately there isn't much I could say about it. However, luckily for you and not so much for me, I was able to find some things about it. One of which being the most talked about thing at the moment is her arrest. I also remember someone stating that the book's original dedication page stated, in quotes, "I could never look at my kids the same way again," which... yikes. People were able to find a pretty disgusting quote which reads, I don't even need to explain how disgusting that is. And the author really tried to say it didn't promote pedophilia. Okay, sure. Let's say it isn't when it clearly is. Not to mention how she was deceiving her publishing author because she knew that if she went to her as Lauren Ashley, she would get rejected again. And the people who had access to the book didn't even read over her finished manuscript. If you know anything about books, you can just read the rest of this screenshot. A lot of the terms being said, I don't really know anything about. I wish I had more information on this book, otherwise this section would be a lot longer. One thing I do want to mention, however, is that this book is not a dark romance. It is romanticizing grooming and pedophilia, no matter how much the author is trying to deny it. And clearly, Book Talk and the rest of the internet seems to agree with... not the author, by the way. We are finally at the section I wanted to talk about the most, since I have a lot of thoughts on this topic and feel the need to put them where everyone can see. Disclaimer, I am not a professional. I don't claim to be a professional. I am just someone with a lot of opinions, and if you have any criticisms of what I have to say, I'll definitely listen, but I probably won't change my opinion since I'm pretty stuck with it. The discussion of fiction affecting reality has been a topic debated and argued over since forever, I believe. It is a highly nuanced topic that requires a thinking that isn't black and white, seeing as each scenario given has a lot of different smaller scenarios that can often contradict a person's thinking. Now let's start off with a very commonly debated topic, pro-shipping. Pro-shipping is defined as someone who respects others for their fictional pairings irregardless of their own feelings towards said pairing, according to Urban Dictionary. This, without a doubt, is the original term for pro-shipping. This definition has definitely turned into just people liking incest and pedophilia. I believe this to be the case for one of many reasons. A lot of pro-shippers themselves tend to align with this definition, thus making people believe that this is what a pro-shipper is defined as. Now, do I think pro-shippers are good people? No, not at all. In fact, I think a lot of them are disgusting people who seriously need to get off the internet, not only for their own health, but the health of others. Regarding the health of others and oneself, I think being a pro-shipper in general, especially if you're a victim yourself, can bring harm to not only yourself, but others. A lot of pro-shippers have the issue of posting their weird and gross behaviors and then get upset when people call them out for it. The simplest solution would be to just stop posting about it. Like, stop. I think a lot of them tend to do it just for the attention/hate. And a side note, the same people who say, "it helps me cope," are the same people who say fiction doesn't affect reality, which is just a contradiction. I will get more on the fiction and reality subject later though. It is essentially mental self-harm disguised as a coping mechanism. Going back to No Mercy, in their statement, the devs said that with the emergence of the internet and pornography in the 90s, sexual crimes decreased by half. This implies that the consumption of porn, a person is less likely to commit a sexual crime, which, I mean, yes, but also no. Studies show that while, yes, this is the case, that doesn't mean the consumption of porn is entirely positive on a person either. For example, being young and having access to porn and suggestive content will without a doubt cause some issues later in life. It can cause anxiety, self-esteem issues, isolation, etc. And I don't mean like someone isolating you, I mean self-isolation. And I am of the belief that an unhealthy obsession with porn can possibly lead to a person committing sexual crimes. However, I also know that's very rare. Saying that because of pornographic content, sex crimes have decreased gets rid of the possibility that sex crimes can be caused by porn addictions, and that porn addictions can't be harmful. Of course, that isn't what they said, nor what they implied, I hope. Not to mention just how exploitative the porn industry has been ever since it started to gain popularity, which is a whole topic that I truly just don't want to talk about. But it seems that with this increase in popularity, it attracts younger and younger audiences. And having a game that promotes rape and incest on Steam, where a lot of kids go to get their games, it definitely increases the chances of finding them and interacting with this content. Okay, let's go back to the whole fiction affecting reality topic. A lot of people like to argue that fiction doesn't affect reality, and I am on the opposing side. What about gross racist caricatures that are used to paint those of a different race in a negative light? One literally made its way into the American government, most commonly known as Jim Crow laws, was inspired by the song Jump Jim Crow, which depicted a stereotypical African American, which is described as lazy. Or how in the media, Asians are constantly depicted with yellow skin and slanted eyes, and their language/culture are always being mocked. These caricatures didn't just make people laugh, no, it caused a lot of harm to Asians and African Americans because of the media pushing these racist depictions. The Jaws movie changed people's perception of sharks, even if that wasn't the intent. And things like movies about the military or Call of Duty influence people into joining the military. You cannot sit there and tell me fiction doesn't affect reality when it so clearly does. It may not be on a 1-to-1 ratio, but it does. That is why sexual depictions of minors, even if fictional, will have consequences not only legally, but socially. I don't think you should go harass every pro shipper you see. It will most likely just tell the algorithms that you want to see more of this content. Also, telling pro shippers you wish they were raped or abused is so wrong on so many levels. Best thing you can do is block them or report them. And if they're actively doing harm to people, then I would still just suggest reporting it. If these people are victims of abuse, they need to be provided with healthier coping mechanisms, not death, rape, or abuse threats. Pro shipping as a community shouldn't be a thing. If you seriously believe it helps you cope, I genuinely suggest you get off the internet for your own safety. Well, that's all I really had to say about these topics. This video was genuinely a pain to not only research but script as well. I hope you enjoyed it, and I encourage you to comment down your experiences or even subscribe. Okay, bye for now. I'll see you in the next one.